welcome everybody to another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people, I am in. Airplane mode, and now a man who has had the last thing he needs to have happen, a man who needs no introduction. Well, you're here.
You might
So it
get me to
wasn't
say
it
anything today.
it
You
wasn't
might
it
get me.
wasn't the last thing. It wasn't the
No, you might get me to say anything today because I'm livid. We're having an open house in my house, and one of the people that's been working on improving the house left behind two messes on a day where the night before we're having an open house.
Damn.
So, and I don't have a cheap house to sell. My house is expensive.
Right.
So it just people can't wait to find an objection so they can save $30,000. And she it'll be interesting to see what else can go wrong today.
Okay.
Really interesting.
All right, well, let's jump into
Really
it so we
interesting.
can get you out of here. Let me edit this. This should really say part 2.
Yeah, I thought I
So
was
we're
done with California. I'll bet you I'll be back there next weekend. I bet you I'll be back there next weekend.
Well, so
Just
we
messed up.
left off, we were covering Lori Favors discussing beware the dangers of black Christianity and a white Christian nationalist America. And it's one of those things where um I just find the whole thing incredibly frustrating, y'all. Like really, I guess my own level of infuriation. It's just the fact that like we can't get anybody to bring logic to the stupid fight. The fact that when it comes time to correct the craziness that's going on in Christianity, especially um, with the white evangelicals, we can't have people who just with their whole chest can say, this is a bunch of nonsense. None of this makes any sense. Oh, yeah, this probably isn't true. Let's move on. Instead, we have black people, people on the left, marginalized people who I guess are trying to reclaim Christianity for their own. They're trying to find the true Christianity, which is the white supremacist version of Christianity at this point. I don't even know what to tell these people. You have the
Well, it's
official
not.
version of Christianity. That's the thing you're complaining about.
It's it's the unofficial version. I want
Yeah,
to
the
be
unofficial
fair.
version.
I
That's
want to be
fine.
fair to the billions of sweet, well-meaning Christians that don't have any angst towards marginalized people. In fact,
I
they
don't,
may
because it
sympathize with
doesn't
them.
matter. It doesn't matter anymore.
It does. It does matter, Pocket
But
Locker.
when I say it doesn't matter, I mean the consequences are the consequences. It is what it is. And I know I'm just out of patience. But listen, if you were running around telling me you didn't want to take the Fauci ouchie, if you were running around telling me, well, you're just concerned about the profit incentive of Pfizer, and there's been some back and forth about were they really honest about all of the data, and you just support bodily autonomy, and so you're fine if people want to take the vaccine. You just don't think you should have to take it to go back to work or to go back to school. Listen, we're just in a time when I don't care if you're malicious or I don't care if you're stupid. All I know is you're wrong. And your wrongness is getting people killed. And so I get that there's a lot of quote unquote well-meaning, well-intentioned Christians, but the conclusion I'm forced to come to is that they're the suckers. And if people really want me to be so concerned about these well-meaning, honest people, show me they're well-meaning, honest people. In other words, treat them like the victims. But we don't do that. And when we don't do that, that tells me we know they're the perpetrators. And that's how life is. That's literally what being an adult is understanding. Being an adult is understanding my mama may have lied to me, but when I go around then spouting what mama told me, I'm now the liar. Right. And there's a lot of things in life. And I say this to my students, right? Like, I'll give you a perfect example because I teach, right? And this is a real life example. I have a lot of students, y'all, who are not ready for college life. I'm gonna just put it out to you, like, they're just not ready. They're just not ready. And what I mean by that is they don't understand the importance of showing up to class. They don't understand the importance of being on time. They don't have study skills. A lot of them are in college, y'all, and they don't know how to learn from a textbook. They don't know how to take notes. They don't understand that it doesn't really look good on you as a young professional to show up to class in your pajamas. Now, these are things that legitimately, I don't think are their fault. A lot of times it's the high school they went to. There may not have been a really good moral model. They may not have been focused on, preparing them for four-year institutions. The teachers may have been so busy with so many headaches and handfuls that they were just happy that these students are kind of floating along and not getting in too much trouble. And so they may not have had a role model in the home. They may be a first-generation college student. There may have been nobody in that household to get them to wrap their heads around what college is really like, how people are really evaluating you. Okay, you want to be a nurse. Here's what it's really going to take for you to get from where you're at in high school to an actual registered nurse. Yeah, it's a long, hard, arduous path. Okay, when they get to my classroom, and I tell this to my students, I say it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. Why? Because you're the adult now. You're on this journey. People are evaluating you, fair or not fair, right, wrong, or indifference. That's just the way the world is. So yes, you may have these bad habits through no fault of your own. You never had an opportunity to learn the right way. You never had an opportunity to do better. But guess what? The consequences of you not being ready are going to be felt by you. And so you are the only person who can take responsibility and turn this thing into a different direction and do what you got to do. Now, can I be patient with them, to help them, to support them, to encourage them? Yeah, and I try my best to do all of that, but ultimately it is on them. And honestly, I'm just at that point with believers because I deserve my life. I'm just as important as every single Bible thumping Christian. Okay. And so when we get together as adults, we have to be able to decide, what's real and what's not, what's right and what's wrong. And to me, it's like, I'm sorry, but they just believe this thing that isn't true. And unfortunately, a lot of them have made it their whole personality. And now we're just at a time when it's doing too much harm to too many people to me, and I'm done playing with these people. Because again, they are going to have harmful ideas about women. They are going to have harmful ideas about gay people. They are going to have harmful justifications for lots of terrible things. And if they can fully, hang on, let's see. Let me pop my one friend back in here. Yeah, looking good. If they truly really don't, then it's time for them to cross over and help us, because we that's what we really need. Is we need their help, and they're not helping. And then the final thing I'll say is this: is the reputation thing matters. It matters. The reason it is so hard to get people out of Christianity is because it is so deeply socially reinforced. And it is so hard because in their brain, good means Christian, good people are Christians, Christians are good people are Christian. Like they're stuck in that loop. And so when these well-meaning people, especially liberal people, especially on the left, especially those who say they are concerned about marginalized people and they recognize the problem, they have to recognize who's doing the problem. Who's doing the problem? Because again, when they took women's rights, reproductive rights away, they didn't say today's a victory for the Republican Party. They didn't say today's a victory for conservatives. They didn't even say today's a victory for the pro-life movement. They didn't say today's a victory for MAGA. They said today's a victory for God. And they're going to say the same thing when they
Who kills
repeal.
babies in the Bible?
Thank you. And they're going to say the same thing when they repeal, uh, you know, Obergefell, when they get rid of gay marriage. Then they're going to say the same thing when they get rid of interracial marriage. They're going to say the same thing when they put creationism back in the classroom. So the people who keep telling us this God is loving and friendly and helps us, and they keep, using their great human reputation on behalf of this God, they're really not helping. They're literally like nuns going around the community doing extortion on behalf of the mob. And that's how I see them. That's largely how, because think about what missionaries do. Missionaries come in, oh, we're missionary hearts, oh, we love Jesus, oh, we're doing soup kitchens, oh, we're building a school, oh, we brought you high-speed internet, and people are just loving it. Well, I don't know about all this Jesus stuff, but I do know we needed some high-speed internet. I do know these kids ain't had new textbooks in 30 years. I do know we ain't had no Wi-Fi up in this piece, and we ain't had no smartphones. So they're happy for the missionaries to come because the missionaries bring the service. But who's coming behind the missionaries? The capitalists are who's coming behind the missionaries. The people who want to exploit your natural resources is who's coming behind the missionaries, right? And so are the preachers and the megachurch pastors, right? And this is how you end up with megachurch pastors that have 5,000 plus churches in Nigeria alone, right? And so it's always these nice, kind, well-meaning people who at this point are just totally irresponsible to me. Because again, like, we have to look at you as you're the one selling the candy for the dudes that are off there in the white van. You're the ones going around, oh, I got your favorite candy. I got your Jolly Ranchers. I got your Sweet Tarts. I got your Snickers bars. I got everything you want. You just got to go see my man back there in the white van. That's it. Don't trust me. It's gonna be right. You just got to go see my man in the van back there. So I know you're not there, but that's where, that's where I'm at with these Christians. It's exhausting. I'm
Hashtag
exhausted.
not all Christians. Hashtag not
Hashtag not
all.
all host on hot program.
Yeah, exactly. The views of Pocket Locker are not necessarily the views of his co-host, my one black friend, or hot program. Look, you're certainly entitled to your point of view, and you're certainly entitled to your opinions. And, this is a forum that we've created for you and I to express our opinions as well as our audience. We're happy for the audience to get involved and share with us what they think. We are not a monolith. All the ideas don't come from one person, nor are they one person's or 10 people's or 50 people's. Everybody has their own perspective, or is entitled at least to develop their own perspective. Um, there are people who are bad actors. They're not doing good. They're doing harm. They're trying to line their own pockets or get this or that or be, an abusive person in one way or another. And they're using Christianity to get what they want. There are people who've never read, the Bible all the way through. There was a post I replied to on Instagram today. Someone has made a movie about the young man that went to India. I think it's the Adamantine Islands or something like that, to proselytize because there were a group of people there who didn't know who the heck Jesus was. And so he went through all this training to go there. And those people, when they saw him coming as a young Asian man, shot him dead. Someone in the comments put, and I thought this was a little harsh, not just a little harsh. I love a story with a happy ending. I knew you'd laugh at that pocket logic. I knew you'd laugh at that.
I love it. You know, but
So,
go
but
ahead, go
hold
ahead,
on, hold on.
go ahead.
So it is a shame, in my opinion, that that's how that young man died. And yet, according to his own faith, he was in the right. He was trying to spread the gospel. He was trying to seek and save the lost. And in my view, the next person who shows up there should be intercepted by the Indian Navy and said, look, we're not trying to give your religion to these people. You may think you're in the right and go home and say, we stopped you. You'd be right. We stopped you. But leave these people alone. You know, they
But see,
don't need you
that's
stealing from
the
them. They don't need
but
what?
that's the thing. Nobody is willing to stop them, and that's the problem. And that's the problem. That's
Well,
the problem
there's some
with
people on that island that were willing to stop them.
that.
And
That's what I'm
and,
saying.
and
That's
that
what they
person,
did.
sure, and that person needs to consider and maybe, and I don't know anything about this young man, right? Maybe he should have considered, hey, I may have been exposed to some diseases that these people on this island have never seen, and I could potentially wipe them out because they don't
Yes.
have any immunity to it. Maybe my presence here is dangerous. He should have considered that. For all I know, he prayed and prayed and prayed about it, and God was in his mind telling him,
Well,
"My
again, he
child,
prayed
everything
and
will be
prayed
okay.
that
You get yourself
for
over there."
nothing. This is what I'm saying. Like, this is what I'm saying is these people talking to themselves, and we're treating that like a legitimate interaction. The thing that scares me is, I'm gonna be honest with you, when we
Well,
look back, when history looks back at us, it's going to judge
mhm.
the skeptics and the non-believers the least favorably. I'm so convinced of this. They're not even the problem anymore. The problem is the rest of us who can see through it but won't say anything. The problem is the rest of us who keep going along with this. And again, it's the most anti-human shit ever. I want to highlight Dade's comment. Dade, always good to see you. Dade has a wonderful channel. Check out Dade Murphy if you aren't subscribed. You should be. How does one? Wait, he says first. He said, "How do you convince someone deeply indoctrinated with dogma to respect empiricism, rational arguments, or evidence?" And then he says, how does one inspire someone to engage with their fellow humans from a place of compassion and empathy? And I'm gonna just tell you straight up, you don't use Christianity. You don't use Christianity. You have to, because
No, I don't think that's the
you
best
can't
way.
do so honestly. And you can't, it's anti-human to its core. And this is what's driving me crazy. Why can we not?
I would like
Go
to.
ahead.
Well, you finish. I would like to address what Dade said. I think there is a way, but I would seriously like to address what Dade said. Now, you go ahead and finish because
I'm
you
good.
spoke first,
You
please.
just can't use Christianity. You can't do it. It's anti-human to its core.
You cannot.
The message is you are born fucked all the way up. There's one path to redemption. It's Jesus. And that, even that, is an anti-human sacrifice. Like, I don't even know why I don't even understand the conversation. Like, I don't this is what I'm saying. I don't understand how secular people, liberal people, humanist, I don't understand. I honestly, I'm to be respectful, I think it's a delightful delusion. I really do. And I think it's a result of a couple of things. I think one, it's residual indoctrination. I'm just being honest. I think a lot of us are former Christians. We were deeply indoctrinated in Christianity. It formed a lot of not just our theology in terms of believing Jesus died for our sins, but it informed our social development. And so a lot of us are just still indoctrinated in Christian bullshit. We believe you can, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And as non-believers, I think we are still trying to do that. I think we are still trying to prove ourselves to Christians. We're trying to prove that we're really good Christians and we're really good people and we actually live the Christian values that they all claim to have. I think it's a huge mistake. hang on, he's just having a connection issue. So that's the first thing I think is happening is residual indoctrination. I think the second thing that's happening is just social pressure. It's just very difficult for people to be confrontational, especially because the sort of white coded white supremacist status quo is, you know, you'll debate and you'll be what's the term I'm looking for? Polite and civil discourse, like basically reinforcing a standard for expressing yourself and addressing your grievances that doesn't actually work because it fits the status quo. But yeah, I think people would like to believe that. I think it's comforting to believe that people really do share our values and that there's just like a layer of miscommunication or misunderstanding, right? We like to say, I think it's all just a big misunderstanding type of deal. And yeah, I just don't think that that's the reality. I think the reality is you can't Christian people out of Christianity. Former Christians need to realize you can't love your enemies. You can't pray for those who persecute you. You're in a fight. These people think they're really living spiritual warfare, and you're the enemy. And it's time to recognize that they have an agenda, and that agenda will continue to push us further and further and further and further into the margins, because that is what the locus of power at the core of Christianity is going to do. And so even the people who want to be kind, want to be compassionate, want to move in solidarity, want to help the marginalized people, you have to realize they're never going to win out because they're not the power core of Christianity. They don't get to say what Christianity really is. It's not up to them. And then even if they were to win out, we would simply be getting a friendlier version of Christianity, which, by the way, we would not get, because all of these people who are liberal, they're liberal in the sense that they don't want to move. They don't want the smoke that the right is getting. But what I'm really getting at is if a lot of these liberal Christians got their way, we'd have all the same fucking problems. We'd have all the same fucking problems. Because when you really press those people, especially the real believers on the left, they tell you the same thing. It's a problem like we're seeing with like the rapture shit. Is everybody's laughing at the rapture Christians for picking the date, but when they correct them, they can't correct them and say you're ridiculous to think that something like the rapture is happening. They're correcting them saying you're ridiculous to know the date. So a lot of these, for instance, liberal Christians that are telling you, oh, I'm not against LGBTQ, whatever. No, what they're saying is, I'm not against your legal right to be married right now because I don't want the social pushback of being against it. Please believe if they really got their chance to be empowered, they would let you know, oh yeah, actually they do believe it's a sin. And actually, yeah, they don't think you should have the right to get married. But that's just my take on it. I think a lot of these people are snakes in the grass. And if they really got their way in power, they would turn on you and you would have the same exact policies that you have coming from the right. But that's because I just don't trust these people. All right, my one black friend, I'm gonna let you take it over.
Thank you. Going back to Dade Murphy. Dade, I do think there is a way, however, it's difficult in some respects. So you may remember the book and the movies for the story A Christmas Carol, where Charles Dickens writes about Ebenezer Scrooge being shown by spirits, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, what his what he was like in the past with Christmas, how he used to have a more favorable, happy attitude for it, what he's like in the present day, and then a future Ebenezer Scrooge, what it's like for him at Christmas time. If we could but challenge people, instead of just merely hating someone they know little to nothing about, or what the news that they choose has programmed them to believe, if they actually have an immersive experience with those people that they have been taught to be prejudiced prejudiced against, to be considered marginalized, or to even actively marginalize those people. If we could get them to have actual experience, not with the outliers who might be cruel or have rather despicable behavior of one kind or another, but the average person, right? The average person that falls in there, they're going to learn for themselves that maybe they've been taught to see it wrong. And maybe they should see those people in a better light, in the true light that shines on them and shines from them, and not merely what's convenient for the media to get eyeballs, or convenient for this hate group or that hate group to gain traction with the general population. I have used briefly on Hot Program the example of, what if instead of when the slaves in the United States were freed, instead of people stopping them from having the best life they could, they encouraged it? What if they just got out of the way? Let's see how these people do on their own. Rather than trying to burn down their crops or persecute them or lynch them or hang them up to terrify them, why don't we, okay, so and so started a restaurant, let's check it out. If it's good, we'll keep going back. If it's not so good, well, we don't have to come back. If they just got out of the way and let people thrive, rather than creating a group of people that they became justified in fearing, because some of those people got angry enough that they would attack back, right? There was a chance to do it well and do it right, but that wasn't taken. That wasn't what most people who had power did. Most people who had power kept on oppressing them. So if we're at that point in society again, where people in power are bent on oppressing people, they're making a mistake. Freedom is the ideal path, true freedom. You know what? You're not so sure you want to keep that baby, rather than forcing you to keep a baby you don't want.
I
Up until a
I
certain
don't
time, you
I
have
don't
an
think
opportunity to
so. I don't
terminate the
think so.
pregnancy.
Especially for non-human.
You don't think so?
No,
Well,
definitely not. For not especially not for non-humanists. People got to get these rose-colored glasses off. Like the,
what a
the reason we live in a world replete with power imbalances is because power imbalances favor the people in power. So I, as a humanist, think freedom is the way to go. I, as a humanist, think every human deserves dignity and autonomy and all of these things. But no, I recognize that I don't live in a world where that's true. And I think, hang on a sec. Yeah, I think he's just having a lot of internet troubles today. So typically he pops out and then has to pop back in real quick. Yeah, it was crazy because we're having such a good conversation today, but we did the show earlier because he's got to go soon. So I don't even know if we're gonna get to this clip. Actually, you know what? Let me maybe play a little bit till he pops back in. All right, let's do this. Swap.
When I say nationalizing their resources, what that means is they are telling the foreign corporations that have set up shop in their countries, the gold mining, the diamond mining, the cocoa mining, I don't think you mine cocoa, but the cocoa harvesting, they are telling European nations, you're not going to be able to send your corporations here and take all of our natural resources, extract them, and then send them back to Europe where you guys make goo gobs of money and you leave Africans with nothing. And I want you to take a listen to this clip by Vic Mensa. And in fact, YouTube, you guys are going to be able to see this clip by Vic Mensa. But he talks a little bit about this in a way that I think is kind of, I mean, he's kind of dope. Like, I like how he does this. But I want you all to take a listen to this clip because, and I don't know that this is what's happening with Nigeria. I don't think we've seen a similar proactive effort to nationalize resources and to take them back from countries.
Wait, what is this? Are they talking to me or they talk Nail, are you talking to me or you talking to rebuke and reprove? And who I don't even remember. I think we've seen rebuke and reprove before, but whatevs. A lot of I hate to sound like that person, but a lot of times I'm not even trying to get through to these people. Like with a name like rebuke and reprove, it's like I think I already know where this is headed. Let me switch back to our other scene. Oh, that's what I did. I see. I did the wrong thing on the wrong scene because I'm smart. All right. So welcome back. Yeah, like it's
Thank you.
just so basically what I was getting at is I think, humans have always been in conflict, they've always been in tension, and there's always been a desire for people to establish dominance and power dynamics, either in micro relationships like, a man over his wife, or macro relationships as one tribe over another. And so I think, especially in the framework of Christianity, that people don't share that ideal. Like I personally share the ideal of freedom and autonomy for people, but I think it's a mistake to assume that that's what most people in the world want. I think we should be trying to convince most people in the world to want that, but I don't think that they do. And and that's part of my problem with Christianity. You have to understand there's always people are always going to be seeking power, especially people that have it. People that have power are not going to let go of it because they know it's game over. They know there's a real difference. They know there's a difference between being rich and poor. They know how much it matters. And so so when you have power and it's built on illegitimate means, be them a lie or criminal means or coercion or force, those are the things people are never going to let go of because that's their only means of power, right? When you come in and you militarily take over somebody else's village, like literally you just bring the guns and the bombs and the whatever and you outmaneuver them, you're never going to support a de-escalation of arms. Never, 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 never. Because you know that would literally mean you no longer have your means of power. So you'll literally kill everybody who even suggests it. Okay? It's the same thing with Christianity. When you have an empire built on lies, built on ignorance, built on prejudice and bigotry, and it's put those people in power, everybody going, no, let's make it humanistic now and make it open and it's going to be pro-science. That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Never. Because these people understand full well that keeping people dumb and dominated is the only way they get to continue to have access to power, which is another reason I think it's a mistake to try to humanize people through their religion, because it's fundamentally anti-human and you're always going to be pushing them towards the power vacuum of the religion. To me, to make it a lot easier to get people to be humanistic is you pull them out of the religion. Now, that's the actual hard part. That part is incredibly difficult, I'll admit. But I think once they're out, then the humanistic thing is way easier. Right, because when they're in, they got to be conflicted. When they're in, they're like, well, I don't think women are less valuable than women, but God, right? It's like Uncle Bobby always says with the battered spouse syndrome, right? That the symptoms of battered spouse syndrome are exactly the same as Christianity, right? The irrational belief that your abuser is omnipresent, the irrational belief that you find your purpose in the abuser, the irrational belief that the abuse is your fault, and the irrational belief that if your abuser can't get to you, they can get to your loved ones. But what is one of the ways that he's always talking about it manifesting? It manifests itself in the woman not being, just assuming it's the woman who's being abused, the woman not being able to form her own opinion. What'd you think of the game yesterday? Well, John said, we were really behind and things were looking rough, but then we scored a touchdown in the third quarter and things were looking up. Okay, well, then you said you guys went to the movies. What'd you see? Well, John really wanted to see the action movie. I wanted to see the romantic comedy, but we went to the action movie. Well, what'd you think of the movie? Well, John said actually it was quite the best direction, right? She can't form her own opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's how religious people are. And they're always gonna be that way. And you also have to remember they're not acting in a vacuum. It's not us having some conversation trying to pull them towards humanity, they're going to Bible study every Wednesday. They're listening to gospel music when they get it. As soon as you're done trying to humanize them, they're getting right back in that car listening to gospel music on their way back home or whatever. Then they're in church on every Sunday morning. And what are they getting? They're getting indoctrination from the pastor in the pulpit. So they are constantly being pulled in the wrong direction. And all of that matters to them, because when they come to form their own opinion, you're not even going to get their own opinion. They're going to be constantly trying to tell you what they think God wants them to tell you, or what their pastor thinks, or what they think as a result of their Bible study. And again, those forces are always going to be telling them, hey, the Bible says for man to lie with man as he does with woman is an abomination, and surely say they shall be put to death. So we're done. Because you can't have a moral guide that has bad guidance in it. Like the law, our laws may not be good, and there are times where you need to do civil disobedience. There are times when the most ethical thing you can do is break the law. But when we make legal codes, the intention is that you follow all of the laws in the legal code, because they are all supposed to be telling you what to do. But with faith, we go, yeah, well, it says don't murder and don't kill in there. So I guess there's some really good stuff. But then it says all of this monstrous stuff too. The monstrous stuff has the same authority that the good stuff has. So that's just why I'm frustrated. I don't know what to do, but I'm like, we can't keep doing this. All right, where's the hang on. All right, let's get a little bit of her in. I know you gotta go soon.
Yeah, I do.
We'll try to get out of here at the time we said. All right, here we go.
Like France, to take them back from countries like Britain. But something is happening here. Pay attention and take a listen to this clip. Amina, if you could just hit that. Thank you so much.
Now, I don't want to say I told you so, but remember my video in front of the Egyptian obelisk in Paris when I said France owes everything to Africa? Well, since Africa has started seizing back their resources, France is literally collapsing like today. 200,000 motherfuckers rioting in the street. They throwing crepes at the police, hitting them with baguettes. I seen 2 motherfuckers sword fighting with baguettes. Motherfuckers, the police.
Is this for real?
No, I'm gonna laugh at people struggling, but the economy is falling the fuck apart. They sacked the prime minister, cut health care, cut holidays. So you gotta understand, our Western comforts, hey, I got them too, I do, are the direct result of third world exploitation. Western luxuries are the result of imperialist exploitation, racist exploitation, straight like that. Act like we're an afterthought and should be grateful. But you turn off the pillaging of African, South American resources, castles crumble. 14 African countries kicked France out. They've been giving 80% of their GDP to France. Niger nationalized the uranium. Burkina Faso nationalized the gold. Mali nationalized the gold. Senegal ejected the troops. What's up, babe? I'ma clean it up, okay? The point here being the colonized peoples of the world are the literal lifeline of the West. They've made themselves entirely dependent on our exploitation, which leads you to ask, the fuck they gonna do when we take the power back? They ain't gonna be
They'll
sweet.
lose their damn minds.
He put it where the goats can get it. But basically, what's happening right now, France's economy is cratering.
I just love the way he talks. Like, I feel like I'm not a woman, but I kind of want to hear him spit some game. He can talk. He's a talker. I want to. Yeah.
It is. He makes an interesting point about, people trying to rule over a country that they conquered a few hundred years ago. In modern times, it would be part of what I do, my day job now, where it didn't used to involve international affairs to the same level. It's on a higher level now. And it's made me more aware of what the plight is of people in other countries, the countries we deal with at work. How what goes on internationally affects the people in those nations, because ultimately it affects us here. The man saying, I'm paraphrasing perhaps, the discomfort they experience allows us to be comfortable here. That is something that I think too few people, self included, notice and appreciate. That is a fact that, yes, inconveniencing them creates conveniences for us. To some degree, some people, yeah, they're getting a job, they're earning a wage, and it's good that that is available to them and their economy. But if that wage is unfair, if the conditions
Yeah, I was
are
gonna say
unfair,
I wouldn't even say that because
yeah,
yeah, and this is why
I
capitalism
don't
doesn't
want,
work.
I don't want, I don't, well, capitalism works just fine. You can have capitalism without exploiting people. The problem is capitalism works best and at its highest efficiency when you are exploiting people.
I don't think you can because I don't think we really want to. Yeah, because we're acting as though the exploitation is optional or like it's a bug. No, it's a feature, and we're
It
dependent on
is
it because you
optional.
have to create the value, and so the value is created by people being able to acquire goods at lower than what they should really pay for them. That's especially true of the business itself, which needs to sell the goods at a profit margin. And so, without that ability to exploit people, you would then have to actually pay laborers what they were actually worth, which would make selling the product unprofitable. Or if you sold it at a profitable margin, the market of consumers would not be able to bear it. So that's
But pocket
so,
pocket.
and if I'm
I
wrong, then why don't they just do it? Like
I
if
don't
I'm
have a
wrong, then
science
let's see
degree.
it.
I don't have a science degree. I have a business degree. So I can tell you you're wrong. They sell plenty of Lamborghinis. Ferrari sells every car they build before it's built. It's pre-sold. Before it's made, it's pre-sold. There are, so at any price level, there are plenty of buyers if the product is desirable.
But that's a luxury good. I mean, like,
But
and luxury good, and
it
that is
almost proves the
exploiting.
point.
No, it doesn't. That's the problem. Like, it's a luxury good, and it shouldn't be sold for the price it's sold for.
No,
Capitalism, like that's
it's sold for what people will pay. If I'm running Ferrari, I'm not interested in producing an economy car that will sell for $21,000.
but you're not
I don't
producing a car that is that much more worth it. Like, is your car?
it
Does it
is
have features
I
that don't
will
have?
argue I will argue my $300,000 Ferrari is not better than a $32,000 Toyota Camry.
It's
It's
exactly what
not.
I'm
It
saying.
will not last as long. It is, in some ways, it is mind blowing the engineering that goes into that
It's
$32,000
fragile. It's
Camry.
probably got cheap plastic all inside the interior. I mean,
Lots of carbon
this is a
fiber.
thing
But
people are having conversations about right now. Literally, that the luxury goods that most people spend tens of thousands of dollars on are literally oftentimes, and I don't want to
not
say this
better
about
than
Ferraris.
cheaper goods.
No, but oftentimes they're produced in the same factory. They're just
Lamborghini
badged
parts are.
differently. Yeah.
Lamborghini uses Lamborghini uses parts from lots of different manufacturers that aren't in the Volkswagen group at all. They'll use parts from Ford. They'll use parts from Volvo. They use what works, and they'll sell it to you at a higher price than they get it from Ford or Volvo for. You know, to the tune of thousands of dollars in markup. They don't care because what people will pay it. They put a Ferrari sticker, I
But
mean a
that's
Lamborghini
a
sticker
whole thing.
over the
Like,
Volvo sticker.
because to me, first off, there's still like luxury goods epitomize the exploitation of capitalism. It's just that they happen to be in a niche where it works for them because they rely on a clientele that's disproportionately exploiting other people. And if they weren't, their clientele wouldn't be able to buy these luxury goods. In other words, if CEOs and rich people were not exploiting the people underneath them, they would not be able to spend $500,000 on a car, or at least not enough people would. So yeah, people can buy the luxury goods and they can, and like you said, they're sold out years in advance, and a lot of times they make you have a previous history. You have to
That's
have
right.
bought three or
Ferrari's
four
notorious for
Ferraris
that.
before you
If you
can
want a
even
special edition,
purchase
yeah.
this Ferrari. But again, without exploitive labor practices, they don't have that market to go to. But to tie it back to Christianity, my thing is what they're really getting at is just the way the West is so compromised with exploitation. And to me, a lot of it is legitimized through Christianity. And I do see, I spent a lot of time listening to people like Esther and stuff like that, and she's definitely raised my awareness about the plight in Africa. But yeah, I think we've talked about some stuff here on the channel where the current Christianity that is practiced in the West is largely co-opted by capitalism. And, a lot of these missionary efforts do end up with capitalist exploitation on the back end. And Christianity that we would not have without capitalist exploitation. Because again, you wouldn't even have things like Black people being Christians if it wasn't for the fact that Christianity was so explicitly used in the slave trade. And again, that's another thing that's just so incredibly frustrating, that I continue to live in America where Black and white Christians alike refuse to acknowledge how Black people became Christians to begin with. So it's like if it's so.
Well, there may be Black people that refuse to acknowledge that too, thinking that it's the saving grace of Jesus Christ himself that has compelled them to be a Christian. And it had nothing to do with the fact that it is often ancestral to be of that faith, right? It's often indoctrination. That's what got you there. It wasn't the Holy Spirit, it was indoctrination from friends and family. And nobody, probably nobody, in most of those cases, meant any ill content whatsoever. It's just how it worked,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see where she
right?
goes. Let's see if she. I want to see if she tries to tie this in a Christian bow and how she does so.
Have you guys seen these protests? It's incredible. We're not talking about that economy today. And that, again, I'm not saying that is at all what's happening in Nigeria. I'm just saying, and frankly, I just think that we should be aware of what's happening with Nigeria, because not only do we have this effort from the Americans attempting to revoke visas for Nigerians, but we also have this situation where a piece of legislation was introduced earlier this week that basically would have given Secretary of State Marco Rubio the capacity to revoke American passports, not just visas from immigrants, but to revoke or to refuse to issue American passports, which, as I said in the podcast, is a good reminder to me. I only got like 2-3 years left on my passport. I'm getting it renewed immediatamente. But watch this space, because we need to be clear about what's happening right now. And for those of you who are not in a space where you are making enemies with people who we may have to look to for refuge, thank you, and keep it going. I know it's difficult work, but we got to do that work. Now, I'd mentioned at the very beginning that we were going to be today talking about this book, The Cross and the Lynching
Wait, what are
Tree,
you saying,
which
Ember? Yeah, I know. We talked about this before. I know there are early churches, but I'm talking about what that church is doing now and how, the Black faith was established here. Obviously, I don't think Western Christianity invented indoctrination, and we know that the church ended up in Africa sort of on its own. But when we talk about, for instance, like these Pentecostals and stuff like that, that's a Protestant movement. So that's a Protestant movement coming back to Africa. That's not the same as like the early Ethiopian or Coptic churches or any of that stuff. And again, they're just, who's doing it now. If they weren't doing it, I think a lot of those other churches probably would be, because again, religions themselves are competing for power vacuums and to exploit each other. So, it's kind of interesting. It's a whole nother side thing, but it's kind of interesting how some churches they get a pass, almost like they're not as exploitative or something, when really they just don't have the same power vacuum. But I kind of lost that comment. I'm sorry, Ember. I should have addressed it sooner.
I'm bringing it back up. This is by James H. Cone, phenomenal scholar, now an ancestor. But the reason this is a little challenging for me is because we are literally also going to be talking about a story of lynching today. I don't know if you've heard, but at Delta State College,
Hey,
and now
Randy.
an additional news report, there have been at least 2 Black men recently whose bodies were found hanging from trees. Now, this is sensitive, and so if you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to share a clip with you. This is a news clip, so you're not going to see anything sensitive here. But this, I don't know why these people are behind me. These people just walking in the hallway. But you are going to see this video clip. We're going to talk about it on the other side. But the fact that today we're talking about the cross and the lynching tree, and the lynching tree is such a prominent portion of white Christendom, I think it's important that we're aware of this. Let's take a listen.
We have some serious news right now. In the past 24 hours, 2 men have been found dead hanging from a tree in Mississippi. And the 2 cases do not have an explicit connection to one another, but the timing is very concerning. I want to talk about both cases separately. The first at Delta State University, where a 21-year-old Trey Reed, who is from Grenada, was discovered Monday morning. He was found, quote, hanging from a tree on campus. Authorities quickly said that they ruled out foul play, but an investigation remains ongoing.
How you rule out
Then
foul
we
play when
found
the
out that
investigation
another man
ongoing?
in
Wow.
Vicksburg, Mississippi, was found also hanging from a tree. That man's name is Corey Zukatis. He's a resident of Brandon, Mississippi. He was found, quote, hanging in a wooded area on the 4100 block of Washington Street near the Ameristar Casino, and an investigation remains ongoing there as well. There remain a lot of unknowns in both situations, and this is something that I'm going to continue researching and asking questions about because this is very serious. Spread the word and follow along for more.
The cross and the lynching tree. We will, of course, follow those 2 stories as we get more information. I will share them with you. But I'm going to read from this text. This is from chapter 1 of this book before we get into the conversation for today. And again, this is about the power of Black Christianity, or the limitations of Black Christian power in a white Christian nationalist world. All right, here we go. Nobody knows the trouble I see, the cross and the lynching tree in the Black experience. And it starts out with 2 quotes. The first is from the book of Acts, chapter 10, verse 39. And the second is a quote from The Crisis, which you should know about. The Crisis, a magazine that features very prominently in Black American history. And it was a source of hugely important information sharing for Black people. But Acts 10:39, the first quote says, "They put him to death by hanging him on a tree," referencing there the story of Jesus. Now, a clip out of this article, which is taken from The Crisis magazine. This is The Crisis 10, number 2, June of 1915, on the lynching of Thomas Brooks in Fayette County, Tennessee. Hundreds of Kodaks clicked all morning at the scene of the lynching. People in automobiles and carriages came from miles around to view that corpse dangling from the end of a rope. Picture cards. Photographers installed a portable printing plant at the bridge and reaped a harvest in selling the postcard showing a photograph of the lynched Negro. Women and children, white women and children, were there by the score. At a number of country schools, at a number of country schools, the day's routine was delayed until boy and girl pupils could get back from viewing the lynched man. These white Christians in the year of our Lord, 1915, had decided that this was a worthwhile venture to pause school so that the school children could take a field trip down to the bridge where they could see the body of that Negro hanging and swinging from a tree. The men, the women, the children, they were there. It was a festive affair, as you can see from the article. The book picks up there and it says the paradox of a crucified Savior lies at the heart of the Christian story. That paradox was particularly evident in the 1st century when crucifixion was recognized as the particular form of execution reserved by the Roman Empire for insurrectionists and rebels. Meaning Jesus wasn't put on a tree because he was somebody special. He was special, but he was put on a tree because he was an insurrectionist. He was a rebel. He was somebody who had to be put down because he was too Martin Luther King / Malcolm X / Ella Baker in his speech.
DeMar
He was-
Travion. That name is crazy work. Whew. It's the thing about a unique name. It's a unique name. All right. Here we go.
Too willing to get into trouble. You can't have somebody going around freeing people from their sicknesses and freeing them in their mind. Not when you live in an occupation, not when you live in an empire. Jesus was put on a cross, not because the cross was holy, but because the cross was like the electric chair. The cross was where you put people who were rabble rousers. Continuing. It was a public spectacle being hung on a cross, accompanied by torture and shame, one of the most humiliating and painful deaths ever devised by human beings, except lynchings, right? You see how similar the conversation about how we describe what they did to the body of Jesus in the black church, in any church, and how similarly black people, when they are being lynched. Do you see the connections here? I hope you see the connections. That Jesus died this way required special explanation. It made no rational or even spiritual sense to say that hope could come out of something so horrible. And yet that strangeness of finding hope in something that awful, it sort of typifies what's happening with Black Christendom. The book goes on to say that the sufferings of Black people during slavery are too deep for words. That suffering did not end with emancipation.
Robert, I think I don't know. I think our tagline's becoming like a high crime and misdemeanor these days. Apparently Comey going to jail. I'm like, Comey, they trying to put Comey in jail for some shit me and Robin be saying all the time.
The violence and oppression of white supremacy took different forms and employed different means to achieve the same end, the subjugation of Black people. And Christian theology for African Americans maintained the same great challenge to explain from the perspective of history and faith how life could be made meaningful in the face of death. At no time was the struggle to keep hope alive more difficult.
This is actually really interesting. This is actually really good.
Then people were during slavery are too deep for words. That suffering did not end with emancipation. The violence and oppression of white supremacy took different forms and employed different means to achieve the same end, the subjugation of Black people. And Christian theology for African Americans maintained the same great challenge to explain from the perspective of history and faith how life could be made meaningful in the face of death. At no time was the struggle to keep hope alive more difficult than during the lynching era. The lynching tree is the most potent symbol of the trouble nobody knows that Black people have seen but do not talk about, because the pain of remembering visions of Black bodies dangling from southern trees surrounded by jeering white, dare I say, Christian mobs is almost too excruciating to recall. That's how we begin today's conversation.
But y'all, that is the reality. That is the history. And it's so, you know what? It's so funny to me, y'all, because it's fatal. It's fatal, and it should be fatal. It should be fatal. It should be the end. That should be it. All we should have to do in America is talk about the history of how Black people became Christian to begin with, and the realities of what it meant to be Black in Christian America. Christian America that from the beginning told us all men were created equal, except the equal men that signed it, about, all but about 2 or 3 of them were slave owners. Imagine that. A literal. These are the guys who are the champions of freedom, and everybody's created equal. They were all slave owners. And again, even then, as Christian men, didn't even think their wives deserved human rights. Didn't get that. Didn't understand that. And then you have this entire history of our people being dragged over here, bound, enslaved, the whole 9 yards. Y'all know the situation. And beyond them using the religion for our enslavement and using the religion during our enslavement, even afterwards, the fact that you would have them, after church, the same way people is now trying to get out of church. Pastor start talking, it'd be like 12:45. They'd be like, Pastor. They'd be looking at him. Because that football game about to start, y'all. That football game is coming on, and Pastor better wrap it up. Okay, that's how it was. But we was gonna go watch a Black man be lynched. So now in 2025. People want to tell us this Jesus is love and God and so wonderful and just the most amazing thing about us. And Black people are still getting lynched. It's just so weird, y'all. Do y'all realize how weird it is that this same Christianity is this thing that people are trying to convince us we have to love. I'm gonna just say this. I heard somebody say this about Israel the other day. Why do they want us to love Israel? It's so weird. Y'all don't think about us trying to love any other country. Why is Netanyahu, why do they want us to put Israeli flags in our government buildings next to the American flags? I'm not talking about
I
right,
can
I'm not
tell
talking
you.
about left, I'm not gonna
I
talk
can
about
tell you.
conservative. But I'm just saying that's how I feel about Christianity. Why do people want us to love this thing? I don't love it.
Because
It's not me, it's
because
not mine, it's foreign to me. I don't love it, I'm not into it.
sort
Go
of
ahead, it's all
the way
you.
to sure the way to think about it is from the biblical perspective. God will bless those who bless Israel, and God will curse those who curse Israel. And they think that when I sincerely ask a Christian person, is there a metal sky dome covering the earth? Right? If a person is Christian and they haven't read the Bible, they'll say no. And I'll say, well, on page 1 or 2 of most Bibles with an Old Testament, it says there is, but there's not. So they now have to look at the Bible differently because I've just told them there's a mistake. Immediately, they must decide whether or not I've misinterpreted something or they believe in something that isn't entirely true, right? If there are someone who will say their admission is that the Bible is 100% true, cover to cover, back to front, and front to back, they now have to deal with the simple fact that it gets things wrong at the start of the book. At the start of the book. So what else is wrong? We can go on, right? It goes and says there's a flat earth, that the earth sits on pillars. Those things aren't true either. It says that they'll have, in Mark, they'll have healing powers where they can lay hands on the sick and heal them. That isn't true either. We can go on and on showing them things, demonstrating that things that the Bible says should be true according to its own statements, but aren't true in the natural world. That's not what we see. We don't see a supernatural world, even though people believe there is one in effect right now. Right? The gods were in the clouds for the Greeks. Now we've been in the clouds. There are no gods up there. Heaven, the biblical heaven, was up there where the birds are flying around. Well, when we could get there, we learned quickly that God and his angels and Jesus were not there. There's no kingdom in the sky there. So people will brush it off now and say, well, it's in another dimension, because that's something we understand about. People are saying there are other dimensions other than length, width, height, and depth, that sort of thing. And there's something else. There's this otherworldly realm out there that exists along with what we can observe here.
But to me, that's just science fiction, right? Like,
It
I
is it
think,
is science fiction.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I do think that sadly, even the Bible in its infancy, in those chapters of Genesis, they weren't trying to state the way the world and universe were created as a fact. They're merely trying to give people ways to understand, sort of like a mnemonic. You might have done that for your students as you were teaching genetics. Here's a mnemonic for you to remember this, or here's a story that'll help you remember these facts, right? We know these things for sure. Here's a falsified story that includes those factual details to help you remember it. Maybe that's how it began. I don't know for sure. Having written quite extensively myself, I kind of wonder if that was what was at play. And in the New Testament, you've heard me say this. It's no shock to a regular viewer of our program here that I think the New Testament reads like homework. The Gospels, anyway, that's like somebody's homework assignment. It's not polished enough for the most part, in my opinion, to read like it was a facts, a story that really happened. There's too much playing around. The Gospel of Matthew is far too creative to simply be a true story. Far too clever. And it's not that people can't be clever. Someone invented a light bulb. I wouldn't have done it. Someone invented the bicycle. Wouldn't have been me. I've built plenty of them, though. I've had other ideas. So we have people who have to wrestle with the idea that they may dearly believe something that wasn't true. My brother had invited to lunch a guy who is this, I guess he's a minister now, but he wrote a book called Face Down, and he was supposed to come to lunch with us or meet us at lunch. And I was wondering, okay, is this guy going to end up talking to me about religion? Because in my view, he and I, if he went to seminary, we're talking over my brother's head the entire time. Like you don't necessarily know some of these things we're going to discuss. If it came up to where he felt the need to be right in his faith, and he knew things that I knew, or why seminary students don't become clergy members, why they drop out, or why they go on anyway, knowing, wow, I can't even believe this the way I did before I started seminary. He and I, his friend and I, can have that conversation. He and I can't have that conversation. My brother and I literally have to discuss other things, but there are plenty of other things to talk about than, his faith. I let
Why
that
they're
be
still
his business.
believers?
My brothers are believers. Yeah,
Yeah, I
they
think
all
most
believe.
believers are just stonewallers. At the end of the day, they just
My
puff up their
my
chest
brothers, my
and
sister,
you
and my
can't go
mom, they
there.
believe.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
And for me, when I came out to them as an atheist, they asked very few questions. Actually, none of them, except for one, my brother Rick, he had questions for me. The others
Uh
didn't, because they knew if you're going to ask me those questions, I'm going to give you honest answers.
But see,
And
my
I
family's
answer
the same way. That reveals it. That's very telling. That's a very ugly aspect of Christianity. They don't realize it, but it's a tacit recognition that it's BS. Because it's like, I know I can't ask you about this, because if I did, you would give me something I have to deal with, and I don't want to deal with it, so I just don't want to talk to you. And then there's also a way in which a lot of believers just shut down. That's the real reason most people, I know I'm picking on us a little bit, y'all, but there's a lot, I think that's the real reason most of y'all won't talk to your friends and family. It's not because they're so reasonable and they're so lovely and you don't think their beliefs are harmful. Most of them are close to you, meaning if they're close to you, their faith is close to the same faith that you practiced. So it's not that. What it really is that there's just no going there with them. You know that they're at the end of the day, they're gonna be well, I love my Jesus and there's nothing you could say to take, and it's just such a like a ugly kind of gross thing. We're just kind of like, ew, I don't want to even deal with that. All right, let's see if we can get her in for a few more minutes before we get out of here. This has been good. I don't know where she's going with all of this, but she done got me intrigued.
Conversation, and I think it's important that we're clear about what's happening, because when we're talking about the cross and the lynching tree, but we got to start it with a modern day story too. Modern day stories about lynchings, that is a problem. Now, when Christianity was African, and I need people to be clear, Christianity was an African iteration. The earliest churches, the earliest Orthodox
This is what
churches
Ember
are
was
part
talking
of
about, I think.
the Ethiopian Coptic Christian reality. I'm not going to get into all the details. Pick up this book. It'll talk to you about it a little bit. I'm not going to get into all the details, but you should just know that the first iteration of Christianity, as it pertains to a church, the concept of the church, were Black people. These were African people. In fact, I'm going to show for you all who are looking on YouTube, Urban View, you're not going to be able to see this, but if you're listening on YouTube, you are looking on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. You see all these images? It's a whole bunch of Black ass Jesuses. I'm sorry. I know some of y'all, I just lost you by putting ass with Jesus. Let me get my spirit right, because I don't want to be an ego. I want to communicate. We ain't trying to be an ego. Do you see all these images of Black Jesus? Now, what's interesting is that they describe him in these articles as Ethiopian art, Orthodox Church of a Black Jesus. There was no such thing as Black or white during the time of the formation of Christianity. White people didn't create ideas like Black and white until many centuries later. They don't even start calling themselves white in the law until the 1600s. All of those images were of Jesus as he was commonly understood to look. Argue with your mom, argue with your pastor, or you can argue with the art. I don't care. I'm just telling you the information. And so when we look at the African understanding of what Christianity was, and I'm not trying to at all say that Christianity was an African religion. It became a global religion, but at the time that it was being formulated in the initial outset, it was a very African concept and construct. And as an institution, African Christianity was largely compatible with African life, meaning and purpose. There was no real need to choose between being black and being a Christian, again, because Europeans didn't start creating phrases like black and white so that they could justify enslaving us until many, many centuries later. Now, what's important about this is that we have to be learned about the shift that took place from what was happening in the continent of Africa when people were understanding what that version of Christianity was to what began happening as a result of how Europeans evolved during the Dark Ages. Now, keep in mind, we got that two cradle theory, which I've described before a little bit at length. Two cradle theory, look up Sheikh Anta Diop. He talks a lot about how there were two cradles of civilization, one being African, one being...
Hang on, I want to acknowledge this. So Jer said, I don't discuss it with my family because I don't do well with arguments or debates. My emotions make my mind go blank and I can't remember all the arguments that I know otherwise, and I just end up crying. Yeah, I think that's fair, Jer. I'm always saying people should just give themselves a pass to not deal with their family and friends if they can't go there. And I just wanted to acknowledge your comment because I think that that's a valid emotion and response.
Yeah,
So yeah, just don't if it's not something you can do comfortably. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll agree with Pocket Locker on that. I think people like Pocket Locker and myself, it's important to him and it's fun for me to have these discussions. Like I love it. Someone wants to argue their religion with me, bring if it's Christianity, which I know something about, bring it on. I'm here for it. Let's have it. Um, but I don't want to hurt anyone, right? I don't remember every argument either, Jer. I don't, and I never will. So I try to make my own arguments so I remember them better. I try to have the data set that I pull from to make my arguments, and it's in their holy book usually. So they don't need to believe what I'm saying from my memory. They can they can read it themselves. And I often will ask, you read that to me. You see what it says. You go to Ezekiel 20 and you read it. I don't need you to interpret it for me. That's pretty plain speaking right there. And they may look, if they're online, through several different translations to find the one that says it in a way that they can accept, right? Whatever I'm putting forward to them, that's a difficulty. They want to put it to me in a way where they can accept it. I understand that believing for them may be hard too, because I read through that Bible, Jer, and there were things that were very difficult for me to read. Knowing that for years I said I believed this whole thing, not having read the whole thing. And after finishing the whole thing, I was like, I could never believe this in its entirety, or even most of it. Even
Yeah,
stuff that's supposed to be simple
Auntie
history.
Jer. Yeah, I don't know why we don't call
I'm sorry, Pocket Locker. My
Jer
alarm went
Auntie.
off. I
No,
gotta
no,
get
you're good.
rolling.
I know you got to run.
I
I
can't
can
hear
wrap.
you. Why can't I
Um,
hear you?
I don't know why you can't hear me. I don't think I changed anything on my end. But yeah, I know he's got to get going, so we can wrap up. It does say he came back.
Can you repeat what
Can you hear me
you
now?
said? I hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying I know you got to go, so we can wrap up. All right, gang, I'm dropping the link to the work adventure where we're at in the chat. I'm done. I'm pretty much done with the other maps. So today may be the last day we're in there, or I may switch us up in the middle of the day or something. So if you're not in the Discord already, jump in the Discord. There's a channel called there's a category called HQ and the channel in there called Bundy Ranch. I typically drop the link to wherever we're hanging out that day in that channel. So yeah, pay attention to that. I may drop the link to the new space later today or tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow we'll be doing Black Free Thinkers over on Skeptic Haven. It'll be me and perhaps Maya, but Maya has some dental work to get done, so we're not sure if Maya will be joining us, but we'll be over there tomorrow. And yeah, we'll be back next time. I think she did. So this is a really interesting piece. So maybe we'll give her one more and finish it up next time. So because I think this topic is definitely one to get into. And yeah, Dade, I wanted to acknowledge your comment too, because I was going to say the same thing, and we'll get more into this next time. But I see a lot of this trying to reclaim earlier Christianity. I kind of want to see where she goes with it. But yeah, sort of, I guess for my closing thought, I'll just say that I do see that as a cope. I see a lot of people trying to reclaim earlier forms of Christianity. I see it as a way of a lot of people, especially marginalized groups, dissociating from the problematic Christianity that we kind of see in America. I see this with, for instance, Americans who get into Coptic Christianity or Orthodox Christianity, or I see this sometimes with like Rastafarians and people like that. But yeah, it's all based on things that aren't true, and then also you can't really practice of an earlier version of Christianity in the current society. Like you can, but you're not really meaningfully contributing to that. When you say people are Christian, they're going to understand it through a certain lens, and so it may make you feel better to tell yourself you're practicing a different form of Christianity or whatever. But ultimately, it's the current form of Christianity that made you a Christian to begin with, and you're not any closer to the truth. But yeah, my one black friend, what are your closing thoughts? And then I know you got to go.
Vet your contractors when you hire them to do work on your property or your automobile, for that matter. Vet your contractors. It's one of the best things you can do. Call people they've worked for, and you won't regret doing it. It's the best time you ever spent. And if you don't have
Wow.
time, find someone who does, because I'm paying for things twice.
Isn't there a
because people
site
keep
for
them
that?
updated.
What's the name of that site?
Angie's List.
Angie's
I
List or
hired people off
whatever.
Angie's List, and I'll say this, and this will. Okay, the baby's sleeping. Okay, I hired people off Angie's List, and I'll say this: if I ever see that dude again, and he's on fire, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't.
Wow.
But at him. Here you go, dude. I realize you're suffering, but here's something back. It's
That's crazy. You're a robot, and I don't know what's going on. We're getting audio issues.
vet your contractors.
Oh, now it's like catching up. That's so
That's
weird.
all I gotta say. I'm writing really quickly suddenly. Yeah, best time you ever spent. Don't be in a hurry. Make people wait on you. Get everything done. Make lists with instructions. Make sure they're followed.
All right. All right, gang. We'll see you next time. I dropped the link to the HQ. Come hang out.